Johnny Depp adjusted the strap on his shoulder, his old worn-out backpack swaying gently with each step. His eyes rested on the vast grasslands of Kansas, where the tranquil beauty always brought him a sense of peace during his solitary journeys. He was used to being isolated from the noise of the world. He found solace in having only himself, his trusty camera, and his insatiable curiosity about the raw beauty of nature. Today, his destination was a remote prairie he had meticulously researched. Johnny envisioned capturing the perfect shot, a moment so vivid it would make the cover of a nature magazine come alive and tell its own story. The path grew narrower as he ventured deeper into the seldom-traveled land. Around him, the only sounds were the rustling of dry grass beneath his boots and the occasional flutter of birds taking flight across the sky. Suddenly, a faint whinny broke the stillness, catching him off guard. Johnny stopped in his tracks, his sharp gaze scanning the expansive field. The sound came again, clearer this time, carrying a desperate tone, almost like a cry for help. He hurried toward the source of the sound, his heart racing faster. On a narrow ridge near a steep drop, a young foal stood trembling, its thin legs precariously gripping the edge of the crumbling earth. The small horse shivered, struggling to maintain balance, its distressed whinnies piercing the quiet air. No sign of a herd or its mother could be seen. Johnny quickly assessed the situation. The ledge where the foal stood appeared to be eroding, and without assistance it could tumble into the deep ravine at any moment. He rummaged through his backpack, pulling out a length of rope and climbing gear. He told himself he couldn't leave the helpless creature behind. Fastening the rope around his waist and securing it to a nearby oak tree, Johnny made his way toward the ledge. As he drew closer, he could see the tension in the foal's wide, frightened eyes. Its weak cries seemed to urge him to move faster. Johnny slowly descended, gripping the rope tightly. Each step was a challenge as the loose soil beneath his feet crumbled away, sending small chunks tumbling into the ravine. Planting his boots firmly into the rocky surface, he inched closer, careful not to startle the foal further. When he was just a few steps away, Johnny paused, extending a hand in a gesture of reassurance. "It's okay, little one. You're going to be all right," he said softly, his voice as much to calm himself as the foal. He gently looped the rope around the animal's slender body, securing it before pulling the foal safely away from the crumbling edge. Johnny descended further, his mind torn between fear and determination. The foal in front of him had stopped its frantic panting and now stared at him with confused, wide eyes. Its frail body trembled as it pressed itself against the cold rock wall. The creature's vulnerability only strengthened Johnny's resolve, but the cliff seemed to have other plans. His foot slipped on a loose rock, sending a surge of adrenaline through his veins. He clung tightly to the safety rope, his fingers whitening under the strain. In that fleeting moment of danger, his mind screamed at him to turn back, to abandon the rescue and save himself. Yet the pleading, round eyes of the foal anchored him in place. Finally, Johnny reached a narrow ledge. Pressing his back against the cliff to steady himself, he saw the foal take a hesitant step back, unsure of his presence but too exhausted to flee. Johnny moved slowly, his voice soft and reassuring, attempting to build trust. The foal whimpered, its small body trembling with fear, but it was too weak to resist. Johnny paused to avoid startling it further. His muscles ached, and every fiber of his was being strained by the perilous situation. Carefully, he retrieved a soft harness from his backpack. The foal flinched at the movement, scraping its hooves against the slick rock in panic. Johnny froze immediately, murmuring steady, soothing words to calm the animal. He edged closer, holding the open harness, inch by inch gaining the foal's trust. Its rough, coarse fur felt brittle under his fingers as he gently secured the harness around its fragile frame. The foal squirmed slightly, but his quiet reassurances calmed it once more. Just as Johnny tightened the harness around his chest, a sharp crack echoed. The rock beneath his feet gave way. His footing vanished, and he dangled precariously from the rope, the harness pulling tight against his body. His shoulder slammed against the cliff face, sending a sharp jolt of pain through him, his heartbeat roaring in his ears. The foal whimpered within the harness, its small body pressed tightly against Johnny's chest. Gritting his teeth, Johnny summoned every ounce of strength to regain his footing. His injured shoulder throbbed with searing pain, but he adjusted his grip on the rope. The climb back up now felt insurmountable, yet he knew both his life and the fragile life of the foal depended on each step he took. Johnny painstakingly ascended, each motion a grueling effort with his injured shoulder. The agony grew with every pull of the rope, but the weight of the tiny foal on his back reminded him of why he couldn't give up. Sweat dripped into his eyes, stinging and blurring his vision, yet he focused on the rope and the sturdy oak tree above that anchored his lifeline. Finally, with one last burst of effort, Johnny hauled himself over the edge of the ravine. Johnny collapsed to the ground, his breaths coming in sharp, ragged gasps. The foal was still trembling in the harness at his side, its breath heavy and labored. He lay still for a moment, his shoulder aching dully, but relief washed over him as he carefully unfastened the straps and gently set the foal down on the soft grass. The little horse let out a faint whinny, its large, round eyes brimming with cautious trust. Leaning back against a tree, Johnny closed his eyes and exhaled deeply. His journey to capture the beauty of the forest through his camera lens had taken an unexpected turn. His high-end camera bag was now battered, several pieces of equipment irreparably damaged, and his tripod lost during the frantic rescue of the foal. He stared at the shattered remains, his despair mounting. Photography was his way of capturing the beauty of nature. But now he found himself immersed in the raw, unpredictable reality of the wilderness. Suddenly, a rustling sound in the nearby bushes snapped him back to the present. Johnny tensed instantly, his gaze darting to the trembling foal. Its faint, weak whinny grew louder as a massive figure emerged from the shadows. It was a mare, strong, her sleek brown coat gleaming in the sunlight. Her steady steps were deliberate but cautious, and her sharp eyes locked onto Johnny and the foal. Johnny froze, his heart pounding in his chest. He knew any sudden movement could provoke the mare. She approached slowly, her gaze shifting between her foal and Johnny. Every muscle in his body was taut, bracing for the worst, but the mare stopped short and lowered her head, gently nudging the foal. The little one let out a soft whimper, staggering toward its mother. The eyes of the horse turned back to Johnny, but with quiet understanding. Johnny felt a strange connection as the mare turned away, leading her foal back into the forest. Before disappearing entirely, she looked back one final time, her deep, expressive eyes holding an unspoken promise. When they vanished into the trees, Johnny slumped back against the trunk, a wave of relief washing over him. The forest returned to its serene silence, but for Johnny, the encounter remained an indelible memory, a testament to the fragile balance between humanity and the untamed wilderness. As he returned to his small cabin on the edge of the woods, his heart was full of emotion. 2 days later, as Johnny left his cabin early in the morning with his camera to capture moments of nature, he stumbled upon something peculiar near his porch. Deep hoofprints were embedded in the soft earth just below the steps. The tracks appeared fresh as if they had been made only hours before. What caught the attention of Johnny was the pattern. It didn't look like random hoofprints left by a wandering horse. These patterns seemed to be deliberately created as if to draw attention. That same day, while walking along a trail near the cabin, Johnny encountered an even stranger sight. A pile of hay and wild apples neatly arranged on a large rock. Animals like deer or squirrels would typically devour such food, but it remained untouched, as though intentionally placed for a specific purpose. A chill ran down Johnny's spine as he watched the trees, feeling like he was being watched. That night, just as Johnny was preparing to sleep, a faint knock on the cabin wall startled him. He looked out the window but saw nothing but the eerie stillness of the forest. In the days that followed, the signs remained. Fresh hoofprints and small piles of food along the trails Johnny frequented. They seemed to be placed on purpose as if conveying a message. One afternoon, in the light filtering through the forest canopy, Johnny saw them. A pale brown mare and her foal standing silently at the edge of the woods, not far from his cabin. They stood motionless, watching him. The foal took a few steps forward, curious but wary, before retreating back to its mother. Johnny felt a mix of awe and confusion, unable to comprehend why these creatures kept reappearing or what they sought. After watching him for a moment, the mare gently nudged the foal, guiding it back. Both disappeared into the forest, leaving Johnny with a flurry of unanswered questions. From that day on, he frequently noticed signs of their presence, hoofprints around the cabin and faint noises from the woods. Gradually, he felt the area around his cabin had become the mare's territory, a strange, comforting sense of protection. A week later, while venturing deeper into the forest with his camera, Johnny stumbled upon a new trail. The forest was alive with birdsong and rustling leaves, but as he turned a corner, all sound abruptly ceased. The silence was unsettling. A heavy breath broke through the stillness. Johnny froze, staring at the source of the noise. Amid the dim shadows of the trees, a mountain lion appeared, its piercing eyes locking onto Johnny. With muscles coiled, the predator prepared to pounce. Johnny's breath caught, his heart pounding as he braced for the unpredictable danger ahead. His mind went numb with fear as the forest seemed to shift beneath him. A loud whinny shattered the silence, and from behind the foliage, a massive wild horse charged forward. Its powerful frame barreled ahead, its fiery eyes locking on the stalking mountain lion. The predator hesitated, startled by the overwhelming presence of this unexpected challenger. Its eyes flickered with uncertainty as it faced the sheer force of the horse standing its ground. The wild horse neighed once more, its powerful call echoing across the trees, forcing the mountain lion to retreat. The predator vanished as swiftly as it had appeared, leaving silence to reign once again. Johnny stood frozen in place, his breathing rapid and uneven. The horse turned back, its sharp eyes locking onto his. From a nearby bush, a timid foal peeked out, observing its mother's every move. Johnny's fear slowly gave way to profound gratitude. The horse had saved him. The mare didn't linger. She nudged her foal forward, her steps calm yet majestic, as though nothing in the world could disturb her. Johnny watched the pair leave, their protective aura lingering in the air. It wasn't just a simple escape. He felt a silent guardianship from the mare, an unspoken bond that stirred something deep within him. After the encounter, Johnny found himself more captivated by the forest than ever before. Camera in hand, he ventured deeper into rarely traveled paths, each step pulling him further into the wilderness's untamed beauty. One day, he glimpsed a shadow moving near a large cluster of boulders ahead. His breath quickened as he recognized the mare standing before a narrow entrance that looked like the mouth of a cave. The foal peeked out from behind her, curiosity gleaming in its round, dark eyes. Hesitant yet unable to resist his curiosity, Johnny approached. The mare glanced at him, her gaze no longer wary but seeming to extend a cautious invitation. He stepped closer, feeling the cool air from the cave brush against his face. The narrow passage led to an open chamber, where the beam of his flashlight illuminated walls etched with ancient symbols. Carvings of animals and humans emerged, narrating a story from a time long past. Most striking was an image of a large horse standing beside a man, their forms intertwined in an enigmatic bond. Johnny spent hours photographing the ancient carvings, his mind buzzing with questions. Upon his return, he reached out to Anna Clinton, a renowned local historian. Hearing Johnny's account, Anna could barely contain her excitement. She explained that local legends spoke of horses chosen by the gods as guardians of the land, protectors of those who lived in harmony with nature. The cave markings might be connected to this ancient lore. Unable to resist the allure of the story, Johnny returned to the cave the next day. This time, near the end of the chamber, he discovered a small carved stone. The engraving depicted a man reaching out to a foal while the mare stood behind, watching intently. The stone exuded an aura of antiquity, its edges smoothed by time. Johnny immediately thought of Anna. Upon seeing the stone, she was visibly astonished. Anna explained that such carvings were often used in rituals symbolizing the sacred bond between humans and horses, foretelling a prophecy of balance between humanity and nature. From then on, Johnny felt an undeniable connection to the wild horses of the region. He was both amazed and skeptical when he encountered a wild horse deep in the forest. The encounter was so extraordinary that he began to wonder if it was part of some predestined event. Before he could dwell on the thought, Anna suggested that the horse might be guiding him towards something deeper. Days later, Johnny noticed a change in the horse's behavior. It no longer kept its distance. Instead, it began appearing near his cabin, sometimes standing quietly at the forest's edge, waiting for him. Trusting his instincts, Johnny decided to follow. The horse led him through unexplored trails, across lush meadows, sparkling streams, and towering cliffs. He was awestruck to discover fields of rare wildflowers and herds of animals with surreal beauty. With every step, Johnny felt as though he was being granted access to a hidden world only the horse could unveil. One cool morning, as Johnny set out to photograph a remote forest corner the horse had shown him earlier, he noticed something unusual in the air. A sense of unease gripped him when he discovered deep, heavy footprints on the trail leading straight into the heart of the woods. Johnny followed the tracks to a clearing. The wild horse stood there, its ears pricked and body tense as it sniffed the air. Suddenly, the sound of snapping branches and faint voices broke the silence nearby. Johnny crouched low, peering through the dense foliage, and spotted a group of armed men surveying the area. Poachers. His heart sank as he realized the danger, not just to the horse, but to the fragile ecosystem of the forest. The poachers had set traps near the clearing, baiting wildlife into their snare. Johnny held his breath as the horse turned and began leading him away from the danger. Yet the poachers pressed closer. Unable to stay silent, Johnny hurled a rock in the opposite direction, creating a noise that distracted the men and drew them away. Taking advantage of the moment, Johnny quickly led the horse out of harm's way. Both of them found refuge in a narrow canyon. Johnny silently calmed himself as the sound of the poachers faded into the distance. However, he knew this wasn't over. Back at the cabin, Johnny contacted local authorities and wildlife protection organizations, detailing the poachers' activities. But lacking solid evidence, his warnings were met with skepticism. Undeterred, Johnny sought out Anna to devise a plan to protect the forest and its inhabitants. With Johnny's familiarity with the terrain and Anna's knowledge of animal behavior, they crafted a bold yet risky strategy. Surprisingly, the wild horse seemed to sense their intentions and began to cooperate, leading them to areas frequented by the poachers. Their fight to defend the forest began there, a journey fraught with challenges but filled with hope. Johnny planned to use his camera traps to capture evidence of the poachers' illegal activities. Anna coordinated with the Wildlife Protection Agency to bolster security in the area. The wild horses, with their keen senses and unmatched speed, became a natural asset in disrupting the poachers' operations. One evening, Johnny set up a series of baitless traps along a trail often used by the poachers. Using natural markers like false hoofprints and disturbed soil, he aimed to draw the attention of the herd of wild horses. A mare leading the herd, alert and cautious, seemed to grasp the situation, steering her group away from the danger zone. The poachers returned the next morning, finding their traps empty, frustration evident on their faces. They ventured deeper into the forest, unaware that Johnny was silently observing their every move from a distance. When the poachers stumbled upon a false trail Johnny had created, they split up, hoping to corner their prey. Just then, the herd of wild horses emerged from the brush. The lead horse let out a powerful neigh, causing the poachers to freeze momentarily. The horses moved swiftly, confusing and disorienting the poachers. Johnny radioed Anna, urging her to alert the authorities. Meanwhile, the poachers, overwhelmed by the dense forest terrain, tripped over roots and were blocked by thick bushes. Johnny lured the poachers into a narrow canyon where their escape routes were limited. The lead horse suddenly appeared atop a high cliff, its resonant neigh echoing through the forest. However, the situation took a dire turn as a wildfire erupted, spreading rapidly due to the dry, hot weather. Johnny ran after the horses, his heart pounding as the urgency of the situation sank in. The herd led him through narrow paths, helping him avoid burning trees. As they approached a steep slope, the ground beneath Johnny's feet gave way, causing him to slide down. He landed on a layer of ash-covered soil, and a stone from his pocket rolled out, emitting a faint glow. The herd, led by the stallion, quickly descended, helping him to his feet. The glow from the stone unexpectedly illuminated a faint path through the thick smoke. The poachers' faces, smeared with soot, reappeared, but the panic in their eyes made it clear the forest was no longer theirs to dominate. Guided by the herd, Johnny pressed forward, determined to escape the danger and complete his mission. Johnny could see the desperation in the wild horses' eyes as they stumbled through the remnants of the fire. The smoldering ground emitted thin smoke that made them cough and stagger. Their hooves struck the unsteady ground with uncertainty, and the tools they once relied on for survival were now abandoned in chaos. For a moment, their eyes met Johnny's, not with malice but with fear deeply etched into their expressions. Yet Johnny had no time to dwell on their plight. After Johnny and the lead horse returned to safety, the tension in the air was palpable. The forest was now eerily quiet, but the silence carried an unsettling unease. The carved stone Johnny had picked up earlier lay dormant in his pocket, no longer glowing, but oddly, it felt heavier than before. Johnny couldn't shake the feeling that the forest hadn't yet let him go. The next morning, when Johnny stepped out of his cabin, he saw the horse waiting nearby. In its mouth was a peculiar branch with golden leaves and delicate white flowers. The horse gently placed the branch on the ground, nudging it toward him before retreating into the shadows of the forest. Johnny carefully picked up the branch, observing its unique features, though its meaning remained unclear. He decided to take it to Anna, who immediately recognized its significance. Anna's face lit up with surprise and urgency. She explained that the plant was mentioned in ancient legends and was said to have the ability to heal diseases beyond the reach of modern medicine. If proven true, it could save countless lives, both wildlife and humans. Johnny and Anna began an in-depth study of the branch, collaborating with biologists and herbal experts. Initial findings suggested the plant had the potential to treat a rare but deadly disease threatening local wildlife and with the potential to spread to humans. The news of this discovery quickly spread, capturing the attention of conservationists, but also drawing back the return of poachers. This time they arrived in greater numbers, equipped with advanced tools to hunt and exploit the forest's precious treasures. Greedy flames now posed a real threat, ready to consume everything Johnny and his horse held dear. The poachers marked valuable trees and set traps throughout the forest. Johnny realized he couldn't face them alone. His horse, sensing his determination, appeared more frequently, guiding him to safe paths and signaling the locations of the invaders. One night, Johnny tracked the poachers to an area filled with rare trees. He took photos and recorded videos as evidence, even though he couldn't stop their destructive actions directly. The horse's warning neigh echoed through the forest, startling the poachers and causing them to flee in panic. But Johnny knew they would return soon, and time was not on his side. He decided to mobilize the local community, using the carved stone and the story of the guiding horse to inspire action. Initially, the villagers were skeptical, but the clear evidence of medicinal branches, the forest's vitality, and the footage of the poachers convinced them. Together, they united to protect the forest. However, the poachers didn't give up. When all their plans failed, they decided to destroy the entire area by planting explosives near caves where animals took refuge. Their goal was to create a natural disaster to cover up their crimes. Johnny, along with the community and his loyal horse, faced a final challenge to save the forest and its invaluable heritage. The air was tense as Johnny and the volunteers worked through the night to locate the explosives. Every sound in the forest was magnified. The crunch of dry leaves underfoot, the distant hoot of an owl, and the ominous ticking of the ERS countdown system. The carved stone in Johnny's pocket seemed to grow heavier, a silent reminder of taboos the poachers were unaware of. The forest was anything but silent. Wild horses, led by a powerful mare, seemed to be on their own mission. Deer darted through the trees, distracting the poachers, while birds dove down, scattering them further. The forest seemed alive, full of resistance. Every creature played a role in defending their home. Johnny spotted the poachers near a cave, their flashlights illuminating a pile of explosives already placed at the entrance. Knowing he had to act immediately, Johnny signaled the volunteers to stay back while he moved closer. His heart pounded in his chest. From the other side of the forest, a dark figure emerged, the mare, her muscular frame and light brown coat shimmering in the moonlight. She snorted loudly, a warning sound that froze the poachers in their tracks. Their weapons trembled in their hands. Before they could react, the mare charged forward, her powerful hooves striking the ground, scattering the poachers like leaves in a storm. The other horses surrounded them, keeping the group in place, while birds and foxes supported from all directions. Seizing the opportunity, Johnny rushed to the pile of explosives. There were less than 3 minutes left on the timer. His hands trembled as he cut each wire, relying on instinct and the strange vibrations emanating from the carved stone. Sweat dripped down his forehead as he worked, while the animals created chaos to keep the poachers at bay. One desperate poacher, cornered, noticed Johnny and raised his weapon. Before he could fire, the mare charged in, her massive body blocking his path. He staggered, dropped his weapon in fear, and ran away, leaving his accomplices helpless. When Johnny severed the final wire, he let out a sigh of relief. But a spark from a damaged explosive triggered a small detonation, throwing him backward. The blast echoed through the forest, sending birds scattering in all directions. The mare immediately ran to Johnny, gently nudging him with her nose. Dazed and injured, he managed to stand, clutching the carved stone tightly in his hand. The volunteers and authorities arrived just in time, capturing the poachers. Johnny watched as the mare and her herd retreated into the forest, their silhouettes fading into the night. The forest had won, but not without a cost. Days later, Johnny awoke in a hospital bed. His mother sat beside him, her face lighting up as he stirred. She recounted how the community had rallied together, hailing him as a hero for his bravery. But Johnny didn't see himself as a hero. He thought of the forest, the mare, and the carved stone that had guided him. His injuries were a small price to pay to save something so precious. As he recovered, visitors, conservationists, and children came to see him. The poachers were prosecuted, and their crimes exposed. The forest began to heal, with new shoots sprouting where destruction had once reigned, and the animals returning home. Inspired by Johnny's dedication, the community worked tirelessly to protect the forest. They established sanctuaries, planted trees, and educated others about the importance of conservation. The forest came alive once more, echoing with the distant sound of galloping hooves, a silent expression of gratitude to the one who had safeguarded it. Johnny had fully recovered and returned to his cabin on the edge of the forest. Occasionally, a wild horse visited the meadow near the cabin, where it had once been injured and nursed back to health by Johnny. Now the horse had regained its strength, returning to its powerful, majestic form. Johnny felt a deep bond with the creature, a connection forged in days of fire and danger. On his desk, the carved stone, a keepsake from those days, remained a constant reminder of the journey he had endured. Johnny devoted his energy to forest conservation, leading community projects and capturing the forest's beauty to share with the world. What was once a battlefield had become a symbol of unity and resilience, a testament to what humans and nature could achieve together. One crisp autumn morning, Johnny stood on his cabin's porch, sipping hot tea as golden leaves gently fell to the ground. Weeks had passed without the horse returning, leaving an odd emptiness within him. He often gazed at the meadow, hoping to glimpse the familiar silhouette of the horse, but the forest seemed to whisper that it had moved on. He understood that wild horses belonged to the wilderness, and the bond they had shared was fleeting. One evening, as the sunset painted the sky in hues of orange and purple, Johnny decided to take a walk. The carved stone in his pocket felt cool to the touch, as if reminding him of the journey he had undertaken. The familiar trail seemed quieter than usual, though the rustling leaves and distant sounds of forest creatures still lingered in the air. Johnny recalled the gift the horse had brought him, a rare tree branch it had unknowingly dropped when it was injured. After research, Johnny and scientists discovered that it belonged to a tree species once thought extinct, with properties capable of healing a rare disease. The news spread quickly, and the tree was cultivated under strict protection. As time passed, though the horse never returned, Johnny found solace in the life it had inspired. His conservation work grew, spreading stories of the carved stone, the forest's recovery, and the horse's gift, a symbol of the connection between humans and nature. The carved stone became a centerpiece in his presentations, not just a memento but a reminder of the responsibility to protect nature, a bond requiring respect and care. Johnny nurtured a profound passion for protecting nature, igniting a movement that inspired people to unite to safeguard endangered animals and fragile ecosystems. Years later, the rare tree cultivated from the horse's gift became the primary ingredient in medicines that saved countless lives. Hospitals and research centers worldwide used it to treat diseases once thought incurable. Johnny often thought of the horse when he read reports of lives saved, imagining it watching over him as its gift continued to create change. As time went on, Johnny grew older in his cabin by the forest's edge, which became a sanctuary for peace and reflection. He often sat on his porch, his gaze lost in the forest, his mind filled with memories. A horse-shaped relief, a gift from her, still rested on his desk, emanating a gentle, enduring glow, as if the forest remained close to him. One snowy winter morning, Johnny received a letter inviting him to accept an international award for his outstanding contributions to conservation. The recognition humbled him, but his thoughts drifted to the horse that had given him a sense of purpose. During the ceremony, standing before the audience, he spoke not about himself, but about the forest, the horse, and the lessons they had taught him. Johnny shared how their gift not only saved lives, but also reminded humanity of the sacred bond between nature and people. After the ceremony, Johnny returned to his cabin, a sense of peace washing over him, knowing his legacy would live on through those he had inspired. The horses, the forest, and the carved relief became symbols of a story far greater than anything he could have imagined. On a spring morning, as the first flowers bloomed, Johnny ventured into the forest one last time. He carried the carved relief, its surface smooth and warm from years of touch. At the clearing where it all began, he gently placed the relief on the ground, a final tribute to the horses and the forest that had transformed his life. As he walked away, the forest hummed with the music of life as if offering its gratitude and farewell. Johnny did not look back, but he felt a familiar presence, a quiet assurance that their bond was still intact. The relief was later donated to a national preservation museum. When it was placed in a display case during the ceremony, the story of Johnny and the horses captivated thousands of visitors from around the world. The relief became a symbol of hope, reminding people of the shared responsibility to protect nature. Johnny stood quietly, watching children intently listen to the tale, feeling for the first time just how far his story had traveled. In the months that followed, Johnny used his growing platform to campaign passionately for wildlife conservation. He visited schools, universities, and global conferences to share stories about the forest and wild horses. Johnny emphasized the lessons he had learned about harmonious coexistence and kindness, not only toward animals but toward all forms of life. Johnny partnered with conservation groups to launch initiatives aimed at protecting endangered wild horse species and restoring degraded grasslands. A campaign called Guardians of the Grasslands was born, focusing on teaching communities how to coexist peacefully with wildlife. This initiative quickly gained momentum, spreading across regions and inspiring grassroots conservation movements. The lesson from this journey of Johnny is that kindness, whether toward animals, people, or the environment, can create ripples of change that transform the world. When people recognize the value of every living being, the lost balance can be restored. Under the golden hues of the setting sun, Johnny stood quietly, feeling the pulse of life around him. He knew his work was far from over, but he was no longer alone. The legacy of the horse protector lived on, in stories, carved stones, and hearts forever changed. Thank you for watching until the end of the video. If you found this content inspiring and meaningful, please like and share it to spread the message to more people. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications so you won't miss the latest videos. If you have any thoughts, feedback, or stories to share, leave a comment below. I would love to hear from you. Thank you for your support and see you in the next video.